Well, welcome to our panel this afternoon on best practice in event planning. My name's David Griffiths and I'm from Miller Insurance, and delighted to be sitting here with the panel today. I'll let the ladies introduce themselves one by one, if that's okay. Starting with you, Claire.
Hello, thanks, David. Hello, everybody. My name is Claire Briegel, and I'm the CEO at World Netball, formerly known as the International Netball Federation. So have been enrolled for, I started in 2012 as an interim, and so nearly, it's 10 years really on and off. And we're the rights holder for the Netball World Cup. And our next Netball World Cup is coming up in Cape Town next year and in July. And we also have the Fast Five Netball World Series, which is a five-a-side short form of the game that's been going for about 12 years. The next one of those is the weekend after next in Christchurch. So I'm wearing the gear on honour of the Kiwis who are hosting that one for us. And we also have a World Youth Cup, which is a world event every 4 years for players of 21 and under. And that one was just cancelled in 21 due to COVID. So our next one is in Gibraltar, which is the first time we're hosting an event there. And actually, our South Africa is the first time we're hosting on the African continent for our World Cup. So when we get on to topics, got some relevance in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire.
Hi, my name's Sarah Bickerton. I am Director of Events at Manchester Central, which is a convention centre just based down the road in Manchester City Centre. We deliver a variety of events, both big and small, probably the most notable of which we had the Commonwealth Games in 2002. We were one of the host venues for that. Probably the most well known in the UK at the moment, we tend to host party political conferences every other year roughly, which brings with it its own challenges, and various conference and exhibitions and a variety of sort of special events as well.
And my name is Trudy Lindblade, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of 2023 Cycling World Championships Limited. We're a company that's been set up specifically to deliver the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships in Glasgow and Scotland next year. It's a brand new event on the international events calendar. It's owned by the UCI, and we're working in partnership with them to bring 13 World Championships together across the sport of cycling into one mega event for the very first time. We're really excited to be delivering it in Glasgow and across Scotland, and it's really important that I say the across Scotland bit because it isn't just a Glasgow event. Traditionally, a lot of major events have come into Scotland and been in the major cities, so we are making this a truly pan-Scotland event with events held up in the north in Fort William with the mountain bike downhill through to Glentress Forest in the south, where you'll have the mountain bike cross country, and Dumfries and Galloway, which will host the road paracycling. I think the other unique thing about our event is we are bringing of the 13 World Championships to a para championships. The track worlds will be fully integrated para and able-bodied track, and we'll have over 8,000 athletes. We've also got amateur World Championships as well, so if you're out there riding a bike and want to qualify for 2023, go and find a qualifying event for the Gran Fondo, and we'll see you in Scotland in 2023. But we're really excited to be delivering this on behalf of Scotland and the UCI.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, all three of you. So given my day jobs all around risk and working with clients on managing risk, whether that's internally or through the use of risk transfer, I thought it'd be interesting to explore the area of risk in the context of event planning. And I think we're really fortunate that we've got different perspectives here, with Claire as a rights holder, Sarah from the venue perspective, and Trudy from the organisational body. So quite interesting, the different lenses that you might see this through. This morning we had obviously John Dutton talking about his story and the resilience that they've had to have coming through postponement, etc., and that's brought some of the risks alive, obviously. But I thought I'd start off by asking what are the major risks that you consider in the early stages of event planning? And how do you go about weighing them up? And I'll start with you, Claire, I think, if that's okay.
So in event planning, so I like to think we're there right at the beginning, because as a rights holder, we set out the objectives for the event, and that's where the profile of risks comes in right at the beginning. So our World Cup is our premier event, a tentpole event. It's a really important event for us. It delivers half the income that keeps the federation running for the next 4 years. So clearly, managing financial risk comes right up there. I would say that as a CEO, wouldn't I? So yes, the financial risk is really important. Operationally, we would, when we are actually looking for members to bid, so the bidding process happens, netball members, England Netball, Australia, those countries will have done a bidding process in their own countries and will have selected a suitable venue. And so they will take out the first element of risk, in that they will have done that first assessment in terms of suitable venues according to our criteria. So they will then bid to us, and they will be coming in with a bidding partner, host city, and with their funders, because as you will be aware, most women's sport still relies very heavily on funding from either cities, like Glasgow is a city that's funded netball events in the past, or certainly putting in that seed funding. With our World Cup in South Africa next year, the South African government are a key funder in terms of getting that up and running. So depending on who those key stakeholders are. So yes, so the risk very early on is competence of the organising committee. We actually have 13 areas that we look for in bidding processes, and we score all of our bidders according to that. We have a thorough bid evaluation process, and for each of those areas we consider risk, and and then obviously much further down the line we get into the operational risks, but right at the beginning the risk profile, and we are prepared to take risks. Going to Africa for the first time is a risk for us in terms of the competence of the bidding committee, but we balance that off against the huge impact that event will have on the continent of Africa and the development of netball in Africa and on the legacy programs. And I know legacy is a dirty word sometimes, but I talk legacy all the time. It's really important in netball, and we get lots of facilities built and all of that. So trade-offs.
So the risks are balanced against the objectives, obviously, and you've got some key ones there in terms of what you're looking to achieve. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key for a venue really is when we are approached or about an event, it's that we understand what those objectives are. I think very much when a venue puts themselves forward for something, it's about that whole city piece. It's about how can the city come together to put that offer forward in the best way to support whatever the objectives of that client may be, and they're not necessarily just commercial. So for a venue, for us, it's about, well, what can we do to help? How can we best suit an event? How can we take some of those risks away, potentially, in terms of helping an organiser have the best fit for their event? So the key sort of thing that we do is within the sales process, we don't leave it just to a sales team. The operational team are there from the very beginning to sort of understand and really live that journey with an organiser from start to finish. We're really proud that we do it that way, and that the person that is there on your sales visit is likely to be running your event when you come here. So we're really trying to have that partnership approach with any organiser to make sure that they've had all their questions answered from us as a venue.
Trudy, what about you?
One could say that doing an event for the very first time through the current last couple of years is a risk in itself, but it's a fantastic risk. And going back to, you make trade-offs. So, you know, Glasgow and Scotland have taken on an opportunity, but also a challenge to create this brand new event, and it's something that they were very excited about from the beginning, working with the UCI to create something brand new. So it's really interesting to hear from both the rights holder and the venue perspective, because I suppose my job is to come in and go, take the bid budget, take the bid documentation, and you've got to operationally turn that into something, and that's the very first thing you've got to do. So it's assessing where are the risks sitting within what's been sold back into government, what's been agreed with the rights holder, what are all of those things that we need to consider really early on, and where are some of the potential flags, because we do know that during the bidding phase is that you're trying to sell your destination, you're trying to sell your venue, you're trying to sell your event. Everybody has a purpose for it, so there will be things that are a bit of a stretch that those of us who come in to deliver these events have to work out a way how we'll make that happen. Which is why we love the challenge. So for me, it's actually understanding up front understanding the bid, understanding the budget, and then how do we operationalise that. But for me, right in the beginning, it's budget, because I need to know what I've got and how I'm going to deliver it within that.
Thank you. So, I mean, as you consider these things, I mean, are there any business risks that you feel you're kind of not prepared to take at an early stage? So, I mean, we talked a bit about financial, but you get into areas of reputational risk. And yeah, is there anything that springs to mind that you kind of you draw a line and you sort of feel that there's areas that you'd be overly concerned about?
So, when we're thinking about where we would host a World Cup, there is a level of delivery competence that you just know you need to have, or to have a support network around it. So when I talk about going to Africa for the first time, we're actually going to the strongest netball nation in Africa, South Africa. There are 2 million girls that play netball in Africa. So it is a well-known sport. It's already on television. Their teams are semi-professional. They're just not quite as professional as some of the other countries. So there is a level of competence around the sport delivery that you've just got to know is there. And we wouldn't compromise at all on that. So the requirements in terms of technical competence, the workforce, having a good host broadcaster, those are things that you just can't go beyond those. But there are risks you are prepared to take, and it might be around changing some, you might change some of the things that wrap around the event. So things like having fan parks and that, if that's new in your sport. But there are certain things you can't change. So you need to know that when the athletes arrive, that they can just perform at their highest level. So they need to, our member countries, so when we have 16 teams at a World Cup, they need to know that from the moment they arrive, all of the facilities are there so that they will be able to perform at their highest level. So you don't compromise on athlete welfare or well-being or the wraparound services for those athletes. Those would be some of my lists, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a venue, sometimes we get a variety of different types of events come to us. And one of the things that we are really key on is that we can deliver the events that come to us. So as an example, we have had quite a few conferences that may have, let's say, protest aspect to them. So any event that we know, okay, this could be a banking AGM that are involved potentially in fracking or whatever, we will think very carefully before we take that booking. And one of the key things that we try and always make sure is that we will only take it if we can deliver it, and the key thing is it won't disturb another event that's in, because our event site is very large. It can take multiple events at once, but all you need is one protest on one event and suddenly it impacts the other event, which is nothing to do with them. So we need to think really carefully about what can we manage, how can we manage it, and how can we make those events go on side by side. So we are very careful in how we manage our diary to ensure that we're getting the right footprint for each event.
Yeah, that's quite different for you, Sarah, obviously, in that multiple event scenario is obviously not unique, but for certainly different, isn't it? Trudy, what about you?
I think I probably align a lot with what Claire said. It's really interesting learning about other venues. I love hearing those sorts of things because all those different challenges that everybody has in their roles. But for us, it is also about the athletes. So, you know, at the end of the day, we are a major sporting event. We are here for the athletes. We need to make sure that they can deliver at their very best on the day. So when you're looking at everything that's sitting in and around the project or the event, we need to make sure that we're providing an authentic playing field for the athletes to deliver, to win their gold medal or to win their world championship. So for us, that's a bit where we're not prepared to take a risk on, and then you sort of peel back the layers of the onion. So then you sort of move out into your athlete, and then into your venues, and then into your, you know, what's happening outside of your venues. So we might look at it from that perspective, but we from a risk perspective, we won't compromise on what we've got to deliver for the athletes. And there are certain things that we're obligated that we actually can't. You know, it doesn't matter what you can do, you need to deliver certain things. But we would make sure that we've got that there ready. And then everything else, if we can provide the best possible experience for our athletes, then we're providing the best possible experience for our spectators, those in the audience. I think the other one you mentioned broadcast before, is, you know, we don't want to compromise on broadcast either. So when you're thinking about technology and you're thinking about some of those sorts of services, you know, and particularly when you're talking budgets again and going, well, where do I spend my money? I do want to make sure that when we go to air that we have got broadcast pitches all around the world through our broadcast partners. So, you know, there's a number of different things you've got to think about and a number of different trade-offs that you have to make as well. So, so for me, there are a couple of areas where I would think about, you know, I wouldn't, from a risk perspective, I wouldn't compromise.
Okay. So let's get closer to the kind of operational side as you're getting closer to an event. What sort of tools do you use to either, you know, actual tools or just mental tools you use to prioritise your focus as you get closer to an event? I know both Claire and Trudy, you kind of on the run in now towards your events next summer. Who'd like to answer first on that one?
We're very much into this at the moment. So we use an online tool called WeTrack that does a lot of our work for us. So we put all our project planners run through there, our risks are run through there. So it's a tool that we can use that then we can hopefully simplify how we then report back. We have we're a subsidiary company of Visit Scotland. So we have a number of governance processes in our organisation as well, just by the very nature of our structure, being a subsidiary of a non-departmental public body. So those sorts of tools are really helpful for us, so we don't have duplication of effort. But they are only as good as the people who use them. So if you don't have the information in there, they're actually no good. So part of our challenge at the moment in the PMO, our project management offices, is when everybody's really busy, making sure that they're keeping those up to date, because obviously they then drive decision making and then drive, and that's not the only tool we use. Obviously, you know, we have the way our PMO operates, the way we operate as a leadership team, and then how we sort of manage that back through. And we still use a good old spreadsheet from time to time as well. They'll never die, I have to say. I do love a good spreadsheet.
From a risk register point of view, do you mean? Or?
Yeah. So, well, we put our risks actually into WeTrack, so we do it that way, but we still use for our project mapping and roadmap, we still use a good old-fashioned spreadsheet. So they're the tools for us. So nothing overly scientific, but certainly I think what goes hand in hand with that is actually communication as well, because, you know, you can have the best sheets of paper, you can have the best tools, but if you don't put the information in it and then you don't communicate what comes out of it, then...
And they've got to be productive as well, haven't they? I mean, nobody
Correct.
wants these tools to just be a kind of tick-boxing exercise. Yeah. It's got to be helpful in your processes that you're learning and taking things forward.
They have to be efficient. I'm one, don't have meetings for meetings' sake and don't have tools for tools' sake. Make sure they actually work for you. And if they don't, stop using them, because, you know, there will be other ways. And don't be afraid of, A, using technology, but also B, staying with what you know. You know, you need to pick what's right for you, what's right for your organisation, and what's right for what you're trying to deliver.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, so from a venue point of view, we have a venue management system that's quite a common system for convention centres across the UK. That's called EBMS. So that's where all our venue information goes on to that we get from a client for the event. I think rather than a specific tool, I think one thing that we've seen from organisers is information is coming a lot later than it ever did. So the key really for us as a venue is about being flexible. You know, pre-COVID, we had an events team that we used to get in their event management plan from a client, I don't know, 3 months in advance, great, boxed off, all sorted. And these days that just isn't the same. You know, there's just so many variables for everybody that gets thrown up closer to the event. So the team have had to really work on being a lot more flexible, understanding and reacting, you know, at a lot later stage, I think, in the planning process. Which everybody, you know, that takes a little while to get used to for some people, but I think it's the way events, certainly at the moment, seem to feel in terms of the planning process is a lot shorter. There's a lot of key decisions are a lot closer to the event time, and I think it's making sure that people don't panic about that. You know, that is just the way events seem to be at the moment, so people need to adapt to that.
And does that mean, I mean, you finding from that there's the temptation to cut corners in some elements?
I wouldn't say cut corners. What I would say is it's making sure that your venue and all the different stakeholders know exactly the detail. You know, we have had instances where we weren't aware of that, so, you know, it's difficult for us to react to. So I think the overwhelming thing is about communicating the detail around that event. You know, never feel as though you're sending a venue too much information, because that just doesn't exist. You know, the more information we have, the more ideas we can give you, the more suggestions we can make to make efficiencies or whatever that may be. But yes, share everything you can, because it will always be useful, even if it's just to understand your event better.
Interesting, thanks, Sarah. Claire?
So thank God for Zoom these days. It saves us a huge amount of money and travel. I think I wanted to pick up on what you were saying about the good old-fashioned communication, and because our events are in so many different places around the world, the cultures of those organising committees are very different. So with South Africa, it's quite a formalised structure, and the oversight board has representatives from all of the local government agencies, and it's almost reporting then into a government, intergovernmental committee, inter-ministries committee, whatever. And I've actually watched some of their 4-hour meetings, and they are quite challenging. So there's a lot of politics, true politics going on. So you have to adapt. You have to adapt as a rights holder your approach depending on the culture that you're operating in. And then we have our board, so the board that I work with are from all around the world, and they will all have different expectations in terms of the reporting that we give them in terms of status of the event. So, you know, you give one country a rag chart with all of the risks and the status of all the key milestones on the event, and they all go, fine, just want to talk about this. And then you'll talk to somebody else that will take it in a completely different way. And I think flexibility is the word. Understanding that each of your stakeholders will need to talk to you and will expect you to report in a different way. And that's probably, you know, over the 10 years I've been with Netball is just, you know, don't expect decisions to be made in the same way in New Zealand as they are in Australia, as they are in England, as they are in South Africa, as they are in the Caribbean. They will all be different. And I guess that's a message to the suppliers, because we do have some suppliers that go from event to event, and they kind of shake their heads sometimes because they might be based in one country and then they're having to operate in. You've got to. You know, don't push water uphill, basically. There's enough to do in major events anyway, that if it's in the culture to mull over things for a long time, and that is the case, that, you know, Caribbean countries talk around things for a long time and then it all happens. Don't try and operate with them as you would in New Zealand. I mean, you just were wasting your time. So yes, interesting times. I'm enjoying it. No, I've been over twice this year, and they're making progress. But they surprise and delight you with the things that they do, and it's wonderful. You know, design of a mascot came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, this most wonderful mascot that was a delight, and they had it all over South African television for 2 hours. And it's like, you couldn't ask for better publicity for the event. And yet, you know, other things take a little bit more doing. But I learn and I love them to bits, and it's going to be an amazing event. So.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about contingency planning. Obviously, we've had some major events going on in the world over the last couple of years, and you know, followed by the death of a monarch, which affected a lot of events, obviously. Contingency planning. Do you invest much time in that, and at what sort of stage do you start? And there's going to be slightly different perspectives here, obviously. But Trudy, how about you?
So contingency planning, really important. Obviously, you know, you line it back to your risk register and that as well. And we were talking actually when we caught up before this about, you know, and often contingency planning is also within your agreements with your rights holders. So it is there and it is something you have to do. But it is also really important, and making sure that you've got that there and thought about from an early stage. From our perspective, we have been thinking about it from an early stage because the organisation we created, we've recruited pretty much 95% of our organisation has been recruited virtually from the beginning. So, you know, contingency planning was there at the forefront. So we set up a pandemic impacts working group. That was one of the first things that we did from a board perspective, so that we could monitor that and start thinking about what we would do. So we actually brought our contingency planning forward to what you would normally do. So we had 7 different scenarios that we were looking at from a pandemic sense, but you can then start massaging them into other types of scenarios. But with that, we also did some very early contingency venue planning as well, as to how we would do that. So for us, really important, we have a mix of indoor and outdoor venues. We have a mix of free events and ticketed events. And you would have all seen, or potentially all saw, you know, during the pandemic, what the UCI did with the World Championships, how they moved it in, I think it was 6 weeks, and were still able to run an incredible World Championships with great imagery in a really, really short time. So it does show you what you can do with some planning and thinking. And the death of a monarch is a really interesting one, and we spoke about this as well. For us, we'll start our road race in Edinburgh. So we've spent a lot of time talking about that, the impacts, insurance versus not insurance, the impact on our team and on our suppliers. So obviously road races, police and transport play a significant role. So a long time talking about it, and then it actually happened. And then to see the impact actually of it in Edinburgh and the resource that it took across government and across the sector and just the impact on people, I think I'm very glad, I'm very sad, but I'm also, you know, the fact that it didn't happen during our event, it would have been unprecedented, and I don't think any of us fully understood how that was going to look and feel, certainly in Scotland anyway. So yes, contingency planning, I think, extremely important and something you shouldn't underestimate.
Yeah, and I think it's something you don't want to underestimate, but also you could spend forever planning for every contingency. So you've got to draw a balance somewhere. So it's a really difficult area to think about. Sarah, what are your thoughts? Obviously, slightly different angle again.
Yeah, so as a venue, we do a lot of contingency planning in terms of general situations, I guess, sort of more operational, I'd say, in terms of whether that be protest, whether it be, I don't know, electrics go down, that type of thing. So we regularly review our contingency plans, document those, and make sure we have them available, particularly if the venue, God forbid, was unusable. I think sort of, again, the key thing for me is the way we have to work is that it's not just about the venue, it's about the events that are in at that time. So when we were starting to do contingency planning for the death of the monarch, it was almost impossible to predict, well, which event will be in, will it be open, will it be in a build, will it be breaking down, you know. And we decided not to go into too much detail really about it, because you could have gone on forever in terms of looking at, you know, the 100 events we had that year to sort of say, well, which is it going to be and how will we deal with it? But I think what we did decide to do was we said we will be proactive, you know, when this happens, in that we will contact clients that are in on, you know, around those days. And again, the key thing for us was we will be flexible, because this is once hopefully in a lifetime. It's no one's fault. And I think, as a venue, it's unfair to say to an organiser, well, you can insure yourself against this. That's just not the relationships we hold with our clients. So we worked together with, I think there was only 3 events that we had to reschedule, but we managed to reschedule them on different dates. And we had said, if you can't do that, we will give you your money back on this occasion, because we deemed it to be fair, we deemed it to be the right thing to do. And a lot of our events, we want people to come back. So it's about that relationship and about helping everybody through a situation that, no one can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose for you, actually more operational issues are more likely to be likely to come to fruition for you when you've got a number of events happening at the same time, and you want potentially one area is out of order or whatever it might be. Those sorts of scenarios are more likely to be arising.
Yeah, and we go through that every year, probably twice a year, to sort of say, right, if this happens, what's the alternative, etc. We are very lucky in Manchester that the various stakeholders of the police, the various agencies, we all work very closely together. Doing the party political conference every other year also offers that reassurance, and I think, one of the biggest things is that who you're dealing with. You meet face to face with that person, that whether it's Bronze Commando or whatever that you're going to be speaking to, because those relationships that you feel supported when a situation occurs is so important, rather than just picking up a phone to someone that you've never set eyes on, you've never met, you don't really know sort of what their support can be. I think regular practice of those things is key, really.
Claire, what about you?
So the area where we spent the most time this year operationally, this is for Commonwealth Games, was the contingency planning around COVID this summer. So we spent a considerable amount of time. So we have a technical delegate that's appointed to work with the organising committee. And that individual is an expert in all things delivery of a netball competition. The person that did it had actually been the competition manager for the World Cup in Liverpool, so they knew how to run a World Cup. So we knew it was in safe hands, but what we didn't know was what would happen should we have a COVID infection in a team. And of course, so I have to hand it to Birmingham 2022. They had a very good analysis around the risk of COVID infection in different sports. Unfortunately, we were right at the top end because we were indoor team sport. People say netball isn't a contact sport, but, it is. So you're throwing and catching balls and you're rubbing up and down, other people all the time. So we were right on the top. We were there with rugby. And we basically said, what happens if you have a team wiped out on any day in the competition, and had to have all of the scenarios worked out, how you reduce the drawdown so you have a meaningful competition, and so you have a broadcast schedule so that you have teams that aren't complaining about the outcome. So we had to take all of our teams through all of this as well. And thank God we didn't have to use any of them. So they're the best contingency plans that you don't touch. So we had 2 infections on technical officials that when they arrived in Birmingham, they had to go into quarantine. And that was it. And considering the amount of COVID that was running around, we were very, very relieved. And have I got time for one more funny story from the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, go for it.
Did anybody see the match where the England player straddled the post? She landed wrapped like a pole dancer around the post. She was travelling at high speed and just went straight into it. Ended up like this. And the post bent. And so I have never seen such a great operation kick into operation. So technical delegate gets right down there with the competition manager, goes, inspects the post. The players are all kind of laughing and going, well, this is funny, isn't it, what they're going to do next? And they bring out the spare post. They put it up. Unfortunately, it's still like that. And they're going, okay, so they're scratching their heads. One of the other players then goes and jumps on it in the other direction and pulls it back. And it's straight, and everyone's going, that shouldn't have happened. Because you can imagine that what would if that team had then lost, you would have a complaint. Anyway, So at quarter time, so they carried on that quarter. At quarter time, technical delegate goes out with his big measuring thing and all of this, does this big rigmarole. It was all rubbish. He didn't touch it at all. But this was just to demonstrate to the cameras that everything was under complete control. So next contingency plan, never let the players touch a broken post. But there was a spare post, and it was all replaced the following day, and it was completely under the floor, completely gone. So Harrods had to come in, the supplier, and replace it. But you know, fortunately, I'm surrounded by these most wonderful events professionals that have seen it all before and have a way of dealing with it and can deal calmly with, even if they've done all the planning, there will always be a situation you haven't planned for, and that's what they do. So, funny story. Excuse me.
Yeah. No, very good. Thank you very much. I think we might just open it up to the floor if there's any questions for the panel. Just put your hand up and they'll find you with a microphone. One at the back. Thank you.
Hi there. This is a question for Trudy. Obviously, you talked about technical services at your events. When you go to your procurement phase, is that all going through a particular portal? Can you let us know?
I can. So yes, we use Public Contract Scotland for our procurement. So as I said earlier, we're a subsidiary of Visit Scotland, so we use the full Scottish Government procurement processes. So Public Contract Scotland, and you'll find what you need. Any lower value procurements often just come through us, but that's under 50. So, yeah, that's the place to go. And I think the other part, for that is not all of our procurements will come through us. We have a hub and spoke model delivery, so central services is delivered through our organisation, but the World Championships are being delivered by our event delivery partners, so they're commercial organisations. So, for example, the mountain bikes cross country down in Glentress is being delivered by an organisation called ESO, so they will follow their processes, but they have to follow sort of overarching central processes. Does that help? That does help. Perfect.
Hi, yeah, question for Sarah. And it would seem to be a common theory actually about competency with your stakeholders or your clients. And clearly there's been, a lack of skill sets now following the COVID and people moving out. Do you see that as ongoing, or do you see those skill sets coming back? And do you see that sort of maintaining within your requirements within your team to be that much more effective?
I think, COVID did impact venue and partners' sort of staffing and capability. I think at first when we came back, it was a real challenge to get the right teams with the right knowledge, with the right experience. I think we are now seeing that we are overcoming those challenges. I think it's really important that we show to particularly graduates and people that events are the place to be. We need to showcase how great they can be to work in. So I think it's certainly got a lot better. I'm not saying that there's not still challenges out there for workforce. And there was some sessions earlier around it. So yeah, the challenges are still there, but I certainly think we're a lot better, in better shape than we were a year ago. But I think it's about maintaining that enthusiasm for events, making sure people know how great it is, how fun it can be, and really showcasing, the best parts of it and ensuring we look after that workforce to keep them within our industry.
Are there any more out there, or we exhausted you? How are we doing for time?
You're doing fine. There is a couple more minutes if you like, but.
Well, I was just going to finish off by just asking whether
final reflections. I don't know whether
what you would consider your the sort of top 3 risks in to successful event planning. Just quick fire, I think, probably. Any order, really, yeah.
I can start.
Trudy, do you want to go with that? Yeah.
People, pennies, process. We need people, we need good people, we need the pennies to be able to do it, and at the moment that's really hard in the current environment. And don't let process bring you undone. We're delivering an event, so you need to find the balance between process and practical. Maybe I need to add a fourth P, practical. You can tell when I did my marketing degree 4 years ago, 20-something years ago, when there were only 4 Ps.
I'd probably say a little bit similar to what you just said, Trudy, in that I think flexibility is key, in events, is that, no matter what happens, people have to be able to adapt. I'd probably say everybody in this room has never had a perfect event. So making sure that you've got that flexibility and adaptability. Communication is key. Like I said, share as much as you can with every stakeholder. Those little bits of information can sometimes be the most vital. And then have it recorded, make sure your processes, whatever your contingencies are, etc., are written down. There's nothing worse than in the heat of the moment. I'm not saying you always would go back to the book if you like, but it's good to reflect and read them regularly to make sure that you are up to speed, you do know what you should be doing in certain situations.
And have access to them as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to make sure that everybody can adapt and be flexible if a situation would occur.
Anything to add, Claire?
Well, I have to agree with the people side. That's absolutely essential. But for me, it's about having a really clear objective about what you're trying to deliver, and then making sure all your stakeholders are aligned. So that for me. But and then can I put in a fourth? Celebrating and thank yous afterwards. So important, because people. If you say thank you a lot, and we do a lot of that, actually. We have to say thank you a lot. We have a lot of help out there, so, yeah.
Perfect. It's my cue to say thank you to the panel, isn't it? Thank you very much, the three of you. Really interesting. Hope the audience enjoyed it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dave.